Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics, back with week 4 of our So Long of the North Pole sampler. Today we'll be working on our holly block. We'll be making 4 of these units and attaching them together with some sashing strips in between and some pieces on the very end. Very straightforward. You've done some of this in previous weeks, so now you can practice what you've already learned previously. And whenever you're working with smaller pieces, notice these are smaller blocks than before, it's very important that your 1/4 inch seams and everything is just a little bit more precise. So I've always known that it was more complicated, harder to work with smaller pieces than bigger pieces. So I'm definitely a little more careful, so a little bit slower, so that everything comes out just so. So as you can see, we have 2 light green, 2 dark green, a bunch of white and a red in the very middle. So let's go ahead and start off just like our pattern showing us. We have 2 of our light greens, 2 of our darker greens, and I'm just going to start off with putting piece A. My fabric is all cut out, and now notice, look how small these little guys are, right? And the previous blocks, I think these were 2.5 inches. So now what does that mean for the corner clipper? Before we get to the corner clipper, let's just go over how we would do that traditionally. Just like we're seeing in our pattern here, is if you don't have the corner clipper or you prefer to just draw the line, that's fine, certainly, of course. You would just put that on, draw the line corner to corner, and just put a quick pin in there and sew directly on the line. Turn and flip, press to the outside, make sure you're exactly where you want to be. I kind of turn that back and trim it. I will go ahead and use the corner clipper because it's going to save me some time today. I don't have to draw anything and I don't have to trim away later. I get to do that step really all in one. So let's just iron that away. And I love that about my friction pen, that I can just take lines away, especially when I'm doing hand embroidery projects and I want those lines that maybe I misdrew something or after the project's embroidered. I just make those lines disappear so they're not showing underneath my embroidery. So how would we work with our corner clipper? Well, we know it's that line, right? We know that line that was there. So I'm going to turn this around because, see my 1.5? That line that I drew with my ruler and my friction pen is that solid line right there that's on my corner clipper. So just visualize that that was your drawn line. And now we'll just go in and we'll just trim that away. Now I don't want that to move on me. I am going to put just a little pin in there. And because I want to maximize my trip to the sewing machine, I'm going to follow suit and do another one down in this corner just like we're showing in our pattern. And this one's nice because I don't have to turn my mat. So again, if you're confused as to how to use the corner clipper, what you know you would do if we were doing this the traditional way would be draw the line. So I'll just put that on there. This might help you visualize the corner clipper. Sometimes when I'm learning to use a new tool, it can be kind of confusing. But let's just pretend that if you didn't want to do that, this line right here will do that for you, right? You're not going to draw the line and use the corner clipper. This is instead of that. But I just want to show you how it's covering up that line, right? So that's why you don't have to do that when you're using the corner clipper, and you don't have to trim later because it does it all in one step. And these little guys are so nice to have. They're kind of small, so I tend to lose them in my sewing room. Grab 1 or 2, you will be so happy that you have that. Now we're going to go ahead and sew our 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to iron that line away because I'm not used to seeing that with my corner clipper, right? We just said we don't have to draw that. So we're going to sew a 1/4 inch here and a 1/4 inch here. Now just to maximize our time, we're going to follow suit with the other ones. We know we're going to do the exact same process with these other ones, so let's just kind of do that all at once. Remember how I said I really recommend that you make 1 block in total before you go and start doing other things in bulk. So we're just going to make the one block together. So we already know that if we followed suit and put that up in the corner, up in the corner, up here and up here, we kind of did this before. I remember that in the previous weeks where we went and, hey, if we're going to acclimate and figure out where's our corner clipper, where's it going to be, let's just do it for everything. So there's our 1.5. And why I'm using the 1.5 is I'm using a 1.5 inch square. Whatever size your square is the measurement that you'll be looking for on your corner clipper. So we'll just come down here, trim, trim. And again, oh, moved off of my corner. Okay, so now you can see how I've prepared everything. I've laid it out and I'm ready to go to the sewing machine. I know that point just might get a little bit stuck in my machine, any machine, so I'm just going to grab a little piece of fabric to get my machine started. Oh, you know what? I already have one on there. I already was planning that. Good. Okay, let's get started. Okay, here's our little piece units, and you saw how I did that, right? I chain pieced down the one side, made my pivot, and as I came back, I had to snip the other ones apart, otherwise I can't get them into position. But look how little thread I actually used. There's very little waste there. So a spool of thread on my machine lasts, oh my gosh, so long, because I try to think about economical ways to save time and thread, which is absolutely a resource, right? We need good quality thread to hold our quilts together for long, long time. We want our quilts to last through many generations. Now with this one, unlike the other one we did before, we had to press some toward the white and some toward the light green. Here it doesn't matter. You're okay to just press toward the white each time. So that's what I will do. See if our machine, yep, it's all nice and warm. I wanted to see if I was at my hottest setting. Now any extra threads here, if you come across that where I made that pivot, just trim that away. I don't even want even extra thread included in my block. It can get caught later on in my machine as I'm sewing my block together. You can see with some of the chain stitching, these blocks can really come together very quickly. And again, I really encourage you to make one block in total before you go and make other blocks, multiple of other blocks, just in case something went a little bit awry. Maybe there was a cutting error, hopefully not a cutting error, because that is probably going to be multiplied. But again, that's why we're economical with our fabric, because if we did mess up a block, you probably have enough fabric to make it again. You might not have enough to make all of the blocks again. So that's why I do like to just double check. So I think we're done with our spinning mat. Let me put that aside, and now I'm going to use my pressing mat kind of as my layout, which I love to do that. So I'm going to lay this out. Now I want to point out one thing. This block, while we alternate it, it's actually just the same block turned, okay? So don't worry. If this is your site picture, or this is a site picture, here I've got my dark green on the left side. Rotate it, I have my light green on the left side. So basically, you're just going to be making 4 of those, but when you assemble that, you'll just do a slight rotation so that you have a different color on the top. So I will look at my block here. Actually, I'm going to do this here. So it's just like what you're going to be doing. I don't want to create any confusion here for you. So I'm just going to be mimicking this layout. Let's just do that right now. And I'll turn my block so it looks just like this too. That's the target. That's where we're going. Now you can see these other pieces here will come into play. Let's go ahead and lay those out so we understand where everything goes. Before we had a long sashing strip in the middle, and now we have a little piece here, just like that. How fun is that? Okay, so you can see how this is going to go together. Right sides together, right sides together, and again, right sides together. As tempted as I am to not pin, I think I learned my lesson early on in our quilting here, our quilt along, that I think I better pin every single time. And you know, if you're going to be pinning a lot, which obviously we know we should, using nice pins, and when they're bent, get rid of them. You know, I don't know why we kind of tend to hang on to bent pins. We don't need to do that. Plus, the more you use them, the duller they'll become. So treat yourself to some new pins now and again. Your projects, it's just going to be a lot more fun, and you don't have to deal with bent pins that just naturally happen over time. All right, let's get started. I've got my starter strip, and I'm just going to do some chain stitching like we've been doing. Pretty straightforward, right? You're already in your week 4. We're starting to do some of the same steps and really, I imagine, becoming a lot more comfortable with the project. And that's the whole goal of the sew along. The more you sew, the more comfortable you are, the more accurate your sewing becomes. And of course, more fun, right? The whole goal is just to enjoy ourselves. Now let's see how we pressed our block. We did go ahead and press toward the sashing, and that makes sense, right? We have bulk right here, but no bulk here. Let's go ahead and press toward that sashing. So that's how, when we're writing a pattern, that's how we make a decision to at least suggest a direction for you to press. Of course, you can do whatever you want. Now, because we want interlocking seams, let me show you here. Right, we pressed here. What's the problem with me pressing to the red, which is what you would expect, right? We always press to the dark. Sometimes we don't, because if I did that, I wouldn't have interlocking seams at this intersection, which I want. So in this instance, I will press away from my red, toward the white, so that when we do final assembly, right here, right there, see how my seams are now moving in opposite directions? So that's something you just want to keep in mind. As a matter of habit, when it doesn't matter, I press to the dark. But when I need interlocking seams, I press where I need to press in order to accomplish the interlocking seams, which are very important to help the block go together precisely and for the block to lie flatter, which of course we want that. And we'll press again toward the sashing. So to the right, to the left, and to the right. And we'll line everything up. Now, bringing that piece together, this piece together, and this piece together. Let's pin, and we will go chain stitch again. This block is coming together pretty quickly. Okay, we'll cut our chain piecing apart. And again, we're just thinking about where and how we want to press, warming up that seam. We know for these, we're pressing toward our sashing. Always like to double check the front side. Make sure I didn't take a tuck. And then with this unit, again, we're going to press away from the red toward the white. And then out here toward our sashing again. Let's double check that. Looks good. Looks real good. All right, let's reacclimate to our block. We have this at the top, we have this in the middle, and this down here. I want to actually see this. I don't know why I want to see it. So what I'm going to do is bring this up like this so I can see it on the top. If I sewed it like this, it's completely blind to me and I'm only seeing the top piece. That's just my preference. There's nothing wrong with sewing it from that side, but I just kind of like to see it because if it does move away, I'll be able to see it happen. So I'm going to start off pinning this where it has to hit, and that's right there in those little interlocking seams. So I'm going to start pinning this little unit here, one on this seam and one right there on the other seam. And I can feel them lock together. Those have to hit, right? Absolutely must hit. I think everything else is slightly negotiable. And I see that my strip is just a little bit longer. So I'm going to kind of just get a little bit of a snug underneath there to make that work. But you can see if I lined this up, this is real life quilting again, seems to keep happening on this series. You can see that, let's look at this from above. Do you see how this fabric is shy just a touch? Could be that I actually took a tuck in the press, which I think I did. Right there, I did. See how even just the most subtle little thing will reveal itself. Still, I think my strip is just a little bit longer, so I may have had just a little bit of a robust 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's okay. That will work out. This is the part that has to hit right here. That part. I'm going to move that down just a breath, because if that's off, that stark contrast of the red and white, guys, there's nowhere to hide. You're going to see it if it's off. And let's pin down in that corner. Okay. So sometimes my sashing strips are a little bit longer than my block. I always want to remeasure my sashing strip. Did I cut it properly? Well, yeah, I did. It's just that I probably took a little bit of a bigger seam than I needed to. That's okay. That is real life quilting, and it'll all work out, and I'll show you how. So let's get our starter strip and let's get going. Okay, that looks good. I'm happy with that. So let's see how we did. Remember, our goal was to just really nail that intersection so our white jets right into our sashing. I'm really happy about that. Let's look and see how we pressed that here. Looks like we pressed it toward the middle. You know, you could go open toward the middle. Again, this one's not going to matter. You know what? I'm going to take that back. I think this will end up mattering when we add. Nope, it won't. Notice how I can tell. Let's say that I had this block right next to it. That would matter, but the fact that I have sashing coming in here, it doesn't really matter which direction that I press this. If it doesn't have a, it does kind of want to go that direction, so let's just go with it. That's how we made the original quilt, so let's just go in that direction. Again, these are just our pressing rules of thumb. If you have a preference to pressing differently, go ahead and do what you're comfortable with. All right, same thing here. I'm going to start there, and we know we're going to pin here first, right? That's the part that has to happen. Write down the stitching. Some of you may have been wondering, why don't I pin from this side? Why don't I pin over here? Like probably all of us have been taught. What I've learned from Tammy Lewis, who you've seen on video with me many times, if you've watched any of our videos, is the beauty of pinning on the left side and just shy of where your 1/4 inch seam allowance will be kind of coming down is you don't have to remove the pins. They can stay in place. Here, because we don't want to sew over pins, if you're pinning from the right side and your pin is jetted out to the right, you'll have to remove the pin just before the machine gets there, which you may be compromising the very seam that you're trying to keep secure. The whole reason you're pinning is you don't want it to move, but now you're moving it potentially by removing the pin that's holding it together. So when Tammy explained that to me, I really thought, you know what, that just makes so much sense. And ever since that time, I've pinned on the side, and I'm finding my blocks are far more accurate and my seams are coming out because I'm not removing that pin from where it belongs, and it can stay there doing its job the whole time. Okay, I'm putting one more pin in, and let's go sew that. And we will be done with that block, and then we'll talk about how to assemble them all together in the unit. Let's see how we did. That's the fun part about piecing. It's testing your skills, right? And they get sharper and sharper the more you sew. I look back at some of my earlier quilts. Wow, that was rough. But what I've learned is that doing it more and more just makes everything seem to just get better with time. But that's true, I think, of everything. The more we do anything, we get more comfortable. We find our way, our specific habits that work really well for us. Okay. So I'm going to press this really well. And you can see right here, I want to point out something that happened to me here during this sewing process. You see how I'm short right here? But it's on the mark here. This is my reference point here. So let's lay out our blocks. Let's talk about real life quilting. You could stop right now and simply seam rip here, and fix this. That's step one. You can absolutely do that, and I encourage you to do that. But let's say that you discover it too late, or maybe you don't have fabric to go back. Now what? Because I want to help you along, because this happens to people. This happens to people probably more than it doesn't happen to people. So let's lay this out. We've got the 2 blocks down here. So this is what we're creating. I'm just going to move that to the side. This will be here, and this is going to be here. Just like that. We've got a piece that's going to go in between, and it looks like we're matched up beautifully as far as length goes. If you feel like it's just a little bit shy, get in there and give it a good press. The pressing really, you got to remember that that's a distance, right, from where it folds over back onto itself is a distance. Even if it was a 64th of an inch, it adds up. So if you find that it's just a little bit short of your sashing strip, just press again. See how the fabric has just a little bit of a fold there. It's almost like a shadow in there because it is folded. So you can do a lot with pressing. So don't always just grab for your seam ripper thinking, oh gosh, I have to make that block again. All right. So you see how I'm just a little bit shy here, but I know that this is parallel with that. So I'm going to go ahead and start here, sewing my sashing strip, and you know where I'm going to pin, right? Now we know this has to end here and that has to end down there. We're not going to trim our sashing strip. That's not happening. We have to make our block fit our sashing strip. Otherwise, our block will end up being just a little bit too short. Let me just give a little bit of a stretch right there and put a pin. Let's head over to our sewing machine. Let's get started. Actually, I can move that pin just a touch. There we go. That's better. Okay. So I'm thinking about that block, this portion right here, that's already on my mind. We're going to press toward the white. And we're going to talk to you about how to deal with that if you didn't fix this, didn't have enough fabric, or kind of discover a little bit late. And no worries. If you have a major deviation, you're going to remake that portion. But if it's a minor deviation, don't worry. Here's how we deal with that. So we know here that this is going to line up and everything, and notice these are right across from each other. When I go right sides together like this, I'm going to start up here. I'm going to flip this. This is happening right down in here, right down there. I know that my white is going to extend just a touch beyond this green. I want to show you that again so that you understand what I'm doing. I don't want to confuse you. We're happy with this portion. We know when we line this up, see this? Boop, boop. That's going to happen from time to time. I want to start down here because I know this part is accurate. I'm going to flip this toward me, and I'm going to pin. Normally, you've watched me pin this end, right? Well, I know that I'm off just a little bit, and to compensate, I'm going to pin it just a little bit long on my sashing strip. You know, when I'm doing video, I always have the option of saying, cut the video, right? And I refilm. So it makes you think that I'm perfect at quilting. Nothing could be further from the truth. And that's why I keep the camera rolling. is because I want you to see I make mistakes actually quite frequently and how to deal with it, because you probably make less mistakes than I, but if you're new to quilting, you're going to be dealing with this type of thing all the time, and I don't want you to get frustrated. There's easy ways to deal with it. So let's go ahead and sew this final piece onto this 2-piece unit with sashing strip in between. Okay. We've been consistently pressing toward the sashing, so let's just keep that going. Okay, let's see how we do. Good. Now, let's look at our picture here. So we want to have that like this. Our blocks are the right size. So we're going to just sew top to bottom. Now I want to mention we'd already put 2 together with the sashing and the long horizontal sashing strip G. So I just wanted to mention that we already did that just to save time. I wanted to make a block with you, attach the sashing. Now we have the 2 upper blocks, the 2 lower blocks are attached already with the sashing. And I just want to check them. Am I the same distance? Are my lines running boom, boom, right on top of each other? And they are. So I know if I pin here on one end and pin on the other, this is going to come out beautifully. Let's just double check. See how I'm going to still double check that that is stacked on that? It is. I'm satisfied with that. I'm going to put a pin in there. Oh, I'm going to scoot that over just a touch. Lay that down. I'm going to put a pin right there. Let's check again. Just make any necessary adjustment. Lay that down gently. Pin. And if you feel inclined to pin in between those places, so nothing's moving, nothing's kind of creeping as your machine, you know, the presser foot kind of pushes along, pin. Pin as much as you feel comfortable that nothing's going to move. All right, let's go sew that nice big long seam. Well, these pens are getting a workout in this quilt, for sure. But that's the nature of piecing. We have to hold everything good and steady so it all comes out nice. All right, let's press toward our sashing again. Our block is coming together very quickly. Of course, I've had 3 of the other blocks done, so that helped. But hey, why are we trying to hurry through our favorite hobby, right? So, you know, this is what we love to do, and if we get to do it all day, so much the better. All right, this is what we look like right now. I'm very happy. Everything is lining up beautifully. And then the final thing to do is you have 2 little sashing strips on the side here. You know where this is headed. We're going to pin here, and we're going to pin here. I just want to double check that my length is good. I'm very happy with that. If it's very natural, let me show you this from overhead. It's natural that it appears initially that your strip is just a little bit longer. But you got to realize, see this little, that once you have your block, the way it's going to be in your quilt, it's going to fit like a puzzle piece. So that's just a natural part when you have the more seams you have, the more you're going to have this, right? Well, when you actually get it pressed out completely flat, everything fits together beautifully. And I love that. So I'll pin in the middle. Here, here. Oh, that one came out. So I have kind of an equal thing, and I'm going to pin here, here. And while I'm at the machine, beginning and end. Okay. I kind of just figure out where's my middle. There. Let's pin there. And then one in between. Let's go finish up this block together. Here we go. Wow, we're there. That's so fun. Okay. We know where we're going to press. We have a lot going on here on the green section, so we're going to press toward our white, of course. Yep. And I like to just kind of press it out evenly. It's just with my hands, making sure I don't take a tuck. And then we give you a final measurement here. Your holly section should measure 13.5 by 16.5. It's always nice to kind of check your progress as you go to make sure that everything is the size that it should be. If it's just a little bit short, I doubt it's going to be long, right? I don't think in my lifetime I've ever had a block come out bigger than it's supposed to. But on many occasions, it came out a little bit smaller because I was taking too generous of a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I was taking just a little bit more, or my pressing wasn't as flat as it could have been. So go ahead at that point and check yourself. You know, am I measuring 16.5? And you got to remember that once we're going to check our block right now. Once I line up here and I smooth this out, there I am. I'm at my 16.5 and I'm at my 13.5. So check yourself, and there you go. We've got that section done. How fun is that? Now, I know this was a longer video. Hang in there. Week 5 is very quick. It's the snowball block. We'll be making lots of the snowball blocks, but it's a very simple block to make. So I'll see you next week.